In 2016, American basketball did not simply crown a champion, it experienced a structural disturbance, a recalibration so subtle at first that many did not recognize it until it was irreversible. The geometry of the court did not change, the rules did not shift, the rims did not move an inch, and yet everything felt different. Defensive positioning felt fragile, safe possessions felt temporary, a 10-point lead felt unsafe, because somewhere between half court and the three-point line, certainty began to dissolve. At the center of that dissolution stood Stephen Curry. But to understand 2016, you cannot begin in 2016. You must begin with doubt. Long before arenas trembled when he crossed midcourt, Curry was fragile in the eyes of the league. Not mentally, physically. His ankles betrayed him early. Repeated sprains turned promise into uncertainty. There were serious conversations inside front offices questioning whether his body could withstand the NBA's violence. He was thin, slight, unassuming. In a league that celebrated physical dominance, he represented finesse. In a culture that worshipped power wings and interior monsters, he was a perimeter specialist with chronic ankle instability.
Right Booker, but Curry behind the back to Thompson. He the turnover. Curry on the run. And behind his back.
American basketball at the time still revolved around physical inevitability. You won with strength. You closed games with isolation. You punished mismatches in the post. The blueprint for superstardom did not look like a 6'2" guard who smiled too much and shot too quickly. When the Golden State organization drafted him, it was not drafting a revolution. It was drafting hope. And hope in that franchise had been inconsistent for years. The Warriors were not yet a dynasty. They were searching for identity. Curry's early seasons flashed brilliance, but brilliance interrupted by fragility creates skepticism. Fans loved the handles, loved the quick release. But availability defines trust, and his ankles made trust complicated. There were moments when even the franchise hedged its bets. Contract negotiations reflected uncertainty. Would he stay healthy? Would he justify investment? In hindsight, the contract became one of the most valuable bargains in sports history. But at the time, it was risk management. Then something changed. It wasn't a sudden explosion, it was accumulation. Strength training, stability work, mechanical refinement. Curry did not reinvent himself overnight, he reinforced himself. The ankles stabilized, the body matured, and as physical confidence returned, creative confidence expanded with it. By the time the 2014 to 2015 season arrived, something coherent was forming in Golden State. Under a motion-heavy system, ball movement replaced stagnation. Spacing became weaponized. Off-ball relocation turned Curry into a moving target rather than a stationary shooter.
Curry off one leg. Old school.
Defenders chasing him through screens felt fatigue compound possession by possession. The Warriors did not play traditional basketball, they played flowing basketball, and Curry was its rhythm. The 2015 championship validated the experiment. It confirmed that pace, space, and shooting could conquer traditional power structures. Curry won MVP. The Warriors lifted the trophy, and many assumed that this was the apex.
Curry drives, steps back. It's good at the pump. Curry the drive, step back, two-pointer, puts it in.
Wants Harrison Barnes to be the guy catching the basketball through rotation.
Curry. A beautiful peak season that would settle into normalcy. They were wrong, because validation does something dangerous to an elite competitor. It removes hesitation. When the 2015 to 2016 season opened, Curry was no longer proving he belonged. He was exploring how far he could stretch belonging. The early games felt abnormal, not in volume alone, but in audacity. Pull-ups from 30 feet in transition, quick trigger threes before defense is set, no hesitation dribbles into logo range. And the most unsettling element for opposing teams was that the efficiency did not dip. Historically difficult shots come with compromise. Efficiency falls as range expands. Risk increases as distance grows. Curry broke that equation. The deeper the attempt, the less his confidence wavered.
Steph Curry, deep three. That's one man's first playing time. Step right to the...
And because confidence influences mechanics, and mechanics influence repetition, the results felt mechanical. By November, defenders were picking him up at half court. By December, some teams extended coverage beyond half court. Big men accustomed to protecting the paint found themselves sprinting toward the perimeter. Defensive geometry bent in real time. Traditional drop coverage collapsed, coaches scrambled, schemes evolved mid-season. But fear spread faster than schemes. Opposing arenas developed a tension unlike anything seen before, a hush that descended the moment Curry crossed the logo, not because he was in isolation, but because he didn't need isolation. He needed inches. The slightest defensive misstep translated into 3 points, and 3 points from him felt like momentum theft. His demeanor made it worse. He did not glare, he did not taunt, he smiled. That smile, broadcast nationally, became psychological warfare. It suggested inevitability, as if he knew something defenders didn't, as if the outcome had been decided before the ball left his fingertips. Statistically, the absurdity escalated. Games with double-digit threes became routine. He broke his own records in real time.
I thought Joe had the open shot for the three first.
Steph Curry, bang, bang. Weaving through traffic, steps into...
Analysts stopped comparing him to peers and began comparing him to eras. The conversation shifted from best shooter to most transformative offensive force. And still the season was not halfway complete. What made 2016 uniquely American in its impact was visibility. National broadcasts, primetime matchups, social media amplification. Every logo 3 became viral within seconds. Youth players across the country attempted replicas the next morning in gyms. The imitation cycle accelerated. Cultural absorption happened instantly. When February arrived, anticipation peaked. Oklahoma City, national television. Overtime. The score tied. Seconds ticking. Curry crosses half court with calm. No timeout. No elaborate set. Just space and belief. From 37 feet, he rises. The arc seems impossible. The buzzer sounds as the ball descends. Splash. That moment transcended highlight status. It felt symbolic, a declaration that traditional range boundaries were obsolete. That distance itself was negotiable, that safe zones did not exist. From that night forward, inevitability solidified. The Warriors surged toward history. 73 wins, 9 losses, surpassing a record once considered untouchable.
I mean, we're going to keep it close to the vest, but we want to win, and everybody wants to play well, and we expect greatness. And in a competitive environment like that, over the course of the season, you're going to have emotion.
The regular season became a march toward statistical immortality, and Curry was the engine. 402 made 3-pointers, a number that felt fictional. Previous records were not nudged, they were obliterated. He joined the exclusive 50-40-90 efficiency club while increasing difficulty.
And you just got to stop it. He is going to switch. Curry step back for 3, drills in. With that, Steph Curry goes over 2,000 points.
And when MVP voting concluded, he became the first unanimous selection in league history. Not a single dissenting vote, but revolutions invite resistance. As the playoffs intensified, physicality rose. Defenses targeted him with aggression. Minor injuries surfaced, fatigue accumulated. The margin between dominance and vulnerability narrowed. And then came the finals. A 3-1 lead, momentum, expectation of coronation, and then resistance from the other side. The comeback narrative unfolded. The loss complicated legacy debates. Critics resurfaced. Questions reemerged. But here is what many misunderstand about revolutions. They are not undone by defeat, because by the time the finals ended, the transformation had already occurred. Youth coaches across America were encouraging range expansion. Front offices were prioritizing shooting depth. Big men were training perimeter skills. The league was adapting. Curry did not merely have a great season, he accelerated evolution. And evolution, once triggered, does not reverse. This was not just about makes, it was about imagination. Expanding the imagination of what was permissible on a basketball court. Before Curry, 35 feet was desperation. After Curry, it was opportunity. American sports culture remembers champions, but it reveres changemakers. And 2016 was not just a championship run, it was a recalibration of the sport's imagination. This was the season basketball was never the same again.
Curry from downtown. Lost the handle. Curry creates some space, knocks it down. Those were all at home. Curry 3. One-on-one on Parker behind the back to flip it up and in.
What made 2016 different wasn't just the shots, it was the reaction to the shots. Opponents didn't just defend Stephen Curry, they anticipated him. They feared him before he attacked. Entire defensive game plans shifted not around stopping a play, but around preventing a possibility. Coaches used language like contain the chaos and limit the avalanche. That wording matters. It wasn't about stopping a scorer. It was about surviving a storm. Because Curry didn't score in isolation bursts. He scored in waves. 8 points in 40 seconds.
Curry lets Holiday go by, and Steph Curry hits a 3. Curry comes up short, offensive rebound. Curry again, and Curry hits a 3.
14 points in 2 minutes.
10 points tonight. Curry Steph Curry. Curry.
Sequences that turned competitive games into psychological collapses. And here's what made it uniquely destabilizing. He didn't need rhythm in the traditional sense. Most elite scorers build momentum through touches, through post-ups, through free throws, through isolation sets designed to heat them up. Curry could ignite from stillness. One dribble, 1 inch, one mistake. Splash, and the avalanche began. Defenders started doing something unusual. They overcorrected. Picking him up 35 feet from the basket meant exposing driving lanes behind them. Trapping him meant abandoning shooters. Switching meant mismatches elsewhere. There was no perfect answer. Every defensive adjustment created vulnerability somewhere else. That's what true gravity looks like. Not just scoring, distortion. The Warriors' system amplified it. Off-ball screens became mazes. Relocation threes punished ball watching. Draymond Green operated as connective tissue, finding Curry in impossible windows.
It's on Curry. Got caught on a hard on a ESPN like Granger picked up.
Klay Thompson punished help defenders. But even within that collective brilliance, the emotional center remained Curry's audacity. By mid-season, broadcasters stopped reacting with surprise and started reacting with expectation. He's in range. That phrase changed basketball language. Range used to mean inside the arc. Now it meant somewhere near half court. Kids across America internalized it instantly. The next generation wasn't practicing mid-range pull-ups first. They were stepping back behind the line. They were imitating the rhythm, the quick release, the shimmy after the make. Cultural absorption was happening in real time, and the numbers kept compounding. 40 points in 3 quarters, 50 in limited minutes. Games where he shot over 60% from deep on double-digit attempts. Efficiency at scale. But beneath the surface brilliance, something more subtle was happening. Opponents began to look defeated before tip-off. That's rare in professional sports. You can see it in body language, in press conferences, in tone. When asked how to guard him, defenders didn't offer confident solutions. They offered survival strategies. Make it tough. Contest everything. Hope-based defense. Because the truth was uncomfortable, you could do everything right and still lose to him. That psychological erosion is what separated 2016 from other elite seasons. This wasn't dominance rooted in overpowering size. It was dominance rooted in inevitability. And inevitability is terrifying. The 73 wins weren't just statistical milestones. They were emotional checkpoints. Each victory reinforcing the idea that this team, powered by Curry's range, was rewriting the boundaries of possible. There was a rhythm to that season, a confidence that bordered on serene. Curry didn't rush, he didn't force, he flowed, and that flow made it look easy. When greatness looks easy, it unsettles competitors even more. Because if it appears effortless, how do you disrupt it? The unanimous MVP vote symbolized more than agreement. It symbolized acknowledgement. The league collectively recognized that something unprecedented had occurred. But sports history is never linear. The postseason tightened. Physical defenses targeted him relentlessly. Contact increased. Space shrank. The margin for error narrowed. In the Western Conference Finals, adversity surfaced. Down 3-1 against Oklahoma City. The very team that witnessed the 37-footer months earlier. Pressure mounted. Critics whispered about fragility, and then the Warriors responded. Game by game, they clawed back. Curry didn't erupt statistically in every moment, but his presence warped coverage enough to reopen space. The comeback reinforced belief. The finals, however, delivered complication. Up 3-1 again, momentum on their side, history within reach, and then resistance materialized in the form of resilience from the opponent. Defensive intensity spiked, physical fatigue compounded. Draymond's suspension altered rhythm. Injuries lingered. The comeback narrative shifted. The final games were tense, compressed, every possession magnified. And when the final buzzer sounded in Game 7, the story fractured. For critics, the collapse overshadowed the revolution. For supporters, it complicated immortality. But perspective matters. Because revolutions are not measured solely by championships. They are measured by lasting change. And the change had already embedded itself in the sport's DNA. Look at the league that followed. Centers extending their shooting range. Guards training from youth to shoot off the dribble from 30 feet. Spacing prioritized over post dominance. Front offices hunting for shooting gravity. That phrase didn't exist prominently before 2016. Now it drives roster construction. Curry's season didn't eliminate traditional greatness. It expanded the menu. It redefined acceptable risk. It validated creative audacity. And culturally, it resonated. American sports culture gravitates towards stories of transformation, undersized, undervalued, overlooked, rising not through intimidation but innovation. Curry embodied that arc, from fragile ankles to architectural disruptor, from skepticism to unanimous validation, from shooter to revolutionary. But perhaps the most significant shift was psychological. Before 2016, a deep three late in a close game felt reckless. After 2016, it felt strategic. That reframing changed late-game decision-making across the league. And once a strategy proves successful at the highest level, it spreads rapidly. The echoes of that season still ripple. Every time a young guard pulls from the logo without hesitation, every time a defense scrambles 28 feet from the rim, every time a coach prioritizes spacing above size. Those are reverberations of 2016. And what makes it uniquely powerful for American audiences is memory. Most fans who watched that season remember where they were during certain shots. The double bang, the 60-point nights, the effortless flurries. It wasn't just performance, it was atmosphere. The sense that you were witnessing the future unfold in real time. And the future felt exhilarating, because it proved that imagination, when executed with precision, can overpower convention. Stephen Curry didn't demand that the league change. He demonstrated that it had to, and once that demonstration reached critical mass, adaptation became survival. Basketball didn't shrink, it stretched, and it has not contracted since. By the spring of 2016, something unusual had happened in American sports media. Debate had quieted. That almost never happens. Sports thrives on argument, on disagreement, on legacy comparisons, on generational battles. But during the peak of Stephen Curry's 2015 to 2016 campaign, the arguments shifted from, is he elite, to, how do we contextualize this? Because what he was doing didn't fit comfortably into historical boxes. He wasn't dominating with physical superiority like past titans. He wasn't dismantling defenses from the mid-post. He wasn't overwhelming opponents with brute force. He was dismantling defensive structure from 35 feet, and analysts struggled to frame it. The deeper threes weren't just high-difficulty attempts, they were high-value math problems. 3 points are greater than 2. That seems simple, but when a player can convert from extreme distance at near-historic efficiency, the math becomes devastating. Imagine defending perfectly for 20 seconds, only to watch a possession end with a 30-foot pull-up that erases your discipline. That's not just frustrating, that's demoralizing. Demoralization changes behavior. Teams began playing faster not because they wanted to, but because they felt pressured to keep pace. Opponents attempted more threes in response. League-wide three-point attempts spiked. Pace increased. The ripple effect was measurable. But beneath analytics and adjustments was something even more significant: permission. Curry gave an entire generation permission to expand their range. Before 2016, a young player pulling from near the logo risked being benched. After 2016, that same shot became developmental experimentation. That's how revolutions embed themselves, not through mandate, but through imitation. Across high school gyms in California, Texas, New York, Florida, teenagers were rehearsing step-backs from distances once considered irresponsible. College coaches recalibrated recruiting priorities. Shooting became currency at a new scale. Front offices studied lineup efficiency differently. Spacing gravity became a measurable metric. The ability of one player to distort defensive coverage gained strategic weight. And yet, through all of this transformation, Curry never changed his demeanor. He remained loose, joyful, relatable. That relatability amplified his cultural impact in America because he didn't intimidate through physique. He inspired through possibility. Fans saw in him something different, not invincibility, but mastery. Mastery achieved through repetition, through refinement, through risk. And the risk is what made 2016 cinematic. The audacity of pulling from 35 feet in transition with no hesitation requires a belief structure that borders on radical. But when radical belief aligns with mechanical precision, it becomes unstoppable. Opposing defenders admitted privately that the most difficult part wasn't the shot itself. It was the unpredictability. He didn't require a set play. He didn't telegraph movement. He flowed. And that fluidity created constant anxiety. Anxiety accumulates. In long, regular seasons, anxiety exhausts. By the time the playoffs arrived, the Warriors carried more than momentum. They carried expectation. 73 wins do not create calm. They create pressure. Every game becomes historical context. Every possession carries narrative weight, and pressure reveals fragility in teams and individuals alike. Curry entered the postseason not just as MVP, but as symbol, the symbol of the new NBA.
Bounce for anybody. Curry, a little rhythm. Curry goes behind the back. Curry, mistake.
the embodiment of the spacing revolution. That symbolism magnified scrutiny. When minor injuries surfaced, critics re-emerged. When shooting percentages dipped briefly, skepticism resurfaced. The Western Conference Finals tested resolve. Down 3-1 to Oklahoma City, the narrative pivoted quickly. Suddenly, inevitability seemed vulnerable. But great revolutions often require adversity to validate endurance. Game by game, Golden State recalibrated. Klay Thompson erupted in a legendary Game 6 performance, stretching Oklahoma City's defense beyond recovery. Curry's gravity re-emerged, bending coverage once more. The comeback restored momentum, but it also intensified expectation. The finals carried mythic weight, a rematch, legacy implications, national attention at maximum volume. And then came fatigue. Subtle at first, cumulative by Game 5. Physical defense targeted Curry relentlessly. Traps intensified. Contact increased. Space narrowed. His movements appeared slightly less explosive. The rhythm that defined the regular season felt interrupted. But revolutions don't vanish because of fatigue. They endure because of memory, and the memory of 2016 had already imprinted itself on the sport. The Game 7 loss complicated perception. Critics questioned durability under pressure. Comparisons intensified. But while debates consumed media cycles, something irreversible had already occurred across the country. Basketball had stretched. The league that emerged the following seasons looked different. Three-point attempts climbed dramatically league-wide. Big men developed perimeter range as necessity, not luxury. Youth development programs emphasized ball handling and shooting at earlier ages. The Warriors' style became blueprint rather than anomaly. And Curry remained central. Not because of noise, but because of proof. Proof that a player under 6'3" could dominate a league historically obsessed with size. Proof that efficiency from distance could outweigh physical mismatch. Proof that joy and dominance could coexist. For American audiences, the story resonates because it aligns with deeper cultural themes. Innovation challenging tradition, skill overcoming doubt, belief reshaping structure. Curry's 2016 season symbolized a broader idea that limits are often inherited assumptions rather than fixed realities. And when one player dismantles those assumptions in front of millions, imitation follows rapidly. Even players who once doubted him adjusted. Veterans extended their range. Teams prioritized shooting depth. The phrase range extender gained traction because survival required adaptation, and adaptation confirmed revolution. But perhaps the most powerful shift wasn't tactical, it was perceptual. Before 2016, basketball orthodoxy dictated spatial hierarchy. The closer you were to the rim, the better your shot. After 2016, distance became weaponized. Threat could originate from anywhere. That redefinition altered defensive psychology permanently. Defenders could no longer relax outside conventional zones. Half court was no longer safe. And once safety disappears in competition, behavior transforms. That's the enduring echo. That's why 2016 remains a dividing line in modern NBA history. Not simply because of 73 wins, not simply because of 402 threes, but because imagination expanded beyond return. And imagination once expanded rarely contracts. Time has a way of smoothing greatness. Moments that once felt impossible slowly become normal, but every once in a while a season resists normalization. 2015 to 2016 is one of those seasons, because when you watch today's NBA, you are watching the aftershock. Look at the spacing. Look at the confidence of guards pulling from the logo without hesitation. Look at 7-footers comfortable initiating offense beyond the arc. Look at how quickly defenses switch, scramble, and extend far beyond the three-point line. This is not coincidence. This is evolution, and evolution has catalysts. Stephen Curry's 2016 campaign functioned as an accelerant. Before that season, three-point volume was increasing gradually. After that season, it surged. Teams that ignored shooting were left behind, rosters were reconstructed around spacing, player development pipelines shifted. But here's what makes that year unforgettable in American sports culture. It didn't feel calculated, it felt explosive. The transition from impressive shooter to transformational force happened in real time. Fans didn't wait for history books to confirm it. They felt it in arenas. They felt it through television broadcasts when commentators stopped sounding surprised and started sounding resigned. They felt it when a 10-point deficit no longer felt secure. And they felt it when half-court became launching pad rather than checkpoint. Curry didn't overpower the league physically. He disarmed it intellectually. He introduced a question defenses weren't built to answer. What if the best shot on the floor isn't inside the arc? And once that question proved sustainable over 82 games, over 73 wins, it forced reconsideration. You can trace the lineage. Modern offensive systems prioritize pace and space more aggressively than ever before. Transition threes are encouraged, not discouraged. Pull-ups from well beyond traditional range are not only accepted, they are rehearsed. Youth players train differently because of 2016. High school gyms across America echo with deep threes taken confidently. College coaches evaluate shooting mechanics from distance as a core skill, not bonus talent. Front offices measure gravity as a strategic asset. And when analysts discuss all-time offensive peaks, 2016 inevitably enters the conversation. Not because of rings, not because of highlight reels, but because of transformation. Transformation is rare. Championships happen every year. Revolutions do not. That season challenged a hierarchy deeply rooted in American basketball tradition. For decades, physical dominance dictated playoff viability. Wings and big men controlled narratives. Curry disrupted that hierarchy. He proved that perimeter skill, when elevated to historic precision, could bend the league around it. Even the finals loss, which complicated the immediate narrative, did not undo the shift. If anything, it humanized it, because revolutions don't require perfection. They require permanence. And permanence is exactly what followed. The Warriors system became template, spacing became doctrine, distance became threat, and Curry remained central to that evolution, not because he demanded credit, but because the evidence was undeniable. What makes 2016 resonate so strongly with American audiences is the emotional memory, the OKC overtime shot, the flurries where arenas fell silent, the nights where broadcasters laughed in disbelief, the unanimous MVP announcement, the 73 wins graphic flashing across screens. These aren't just statistical bookmarks, they are cultural timestamps. Ask fans where they were when Curry hit that 37-footer. Many will remember, because that shot symbolized permission. Permission to stretch imagination, permission to attempt what once felt reckless, permission to redefine boundaries. That's the deeper impact. Sports history often focuses on trophies, but transformation often matters more than hardware. And if you step back and examine the arc objectively, the evidence is clear. Before 2016, range had limits. After 2016, range expanded. Before 2016, deep pull-ups were risk. After 2016, they became weapon. Before 2016, defensive comfort began near half court. After 2016, there was no comfort. Stephen Curry didn't just break a record, he broke defensive expectation. He broke coaching convention. He broke developmental hesitation. And perhaps most importantly, he broke the psychological barrier surrounding distance. Because once players believe something is possible, repetition makes it permanent. Today, the league is filled with players who grew up watching that season. Players who saw the audacity and decided to imitate it. Players who trained from the logo because they saw it succeed on the biggest stage. That's legacy, not a single game, not a single trophy, but systemic imprint. The NBA did not collapse under Curry's revolution. It expanded, and expansion is irreversible.
Curry behind the back, drives to the basket, scoop layup off the... Curry gets away, scoops inside again, left hand spins, drives down the lane.
In American sports culture, we often debate greatness in terms of rings, MVPs, statistical dominance. But sometimes, greatness reveals itself through disruption, through forcing a league to rethink its architecture, through changing how future generations train, through making something once considered outrageous feel ordinary. That's what happened in 2016. It wasn't loud in the traditional sense, it wasn't fueled by controversy, it wasn't driven by scandal, it was driven by skill. Relentless, repeatable, refined skill. And when skill reaches a threshold high enough to warp structure, you are no longer watching excellence, you are watching revolution. That is why 2016 endures. That is why the season still feels different when revisited. That is why modern basketball still carries its fingerprints. Because in that year, one player expanded the boundaries of acceptable ambition on a basketball court. One player made 35 feet feel like comfort. One player forced defensive coordinators into existential adjustment. One player shifted developmental philosophy nationwide. One player proved that imagination, when paired with precision, can overpower tradition. Stephen Curry did not ask the league to change. He demonstrated that it had to. And once it did, there was no returning to the old blueprint. The court stayed the same size, but the game became bigger, and in 2016, basketball was never the same again. But here's the truth about revolutions. You don't fully understand them while they're happening. You understand them years later, when you realize the game you're watching today was shaped by a single season. If you love basketball history, not just highlights, but the moments that changed everything, this channel is built for you. Because we don't just revisit games, we revisit turning points, the seasons that rewrote legacies, the nights that reshaped the league, and the players who forced evolution. So if you want more deep NBA documentaries like this, stories that go beyond stats and into impact, subscribe, and join us as we uncover the echoes that still define the NBA today. Because the next revolution, it might already be happening.